Picture this. A woman in 1870 laced into a corset so tight she can barely breathe, her silhouette transformed into an hourglass by steel and whalebone. This wasn't just fashion. This was sculpture. This was art worn on the body, and it's still shaping how we create art today. The 19th century was the century fashion became fine art. When Charles Frederick Worth opened his atelier in Paris in the 1850s, he didn't just make dresses. He signed them like paintings. He was the first fashion designer to be called an artist, and suddenly, what women wore became as important as what hung in the Louvre. The crinoline cage, that massive steel structure that made skirts balloon to 6 feet wide, wasn't just about modesty. It was about creating a living, breathing sculpture that moved through space. But here's where it gets wild. The Impressionists were obsessed with this. Monet, Renoir, Degas, they weren't just painting pretty ladies. They were documenting the birth of the modern fashion industry. Between 1860 and 1880, Paris became the style capital of the world, and these artists captured every fold, every ruffle, every shimmer of silk. Fashion magazines were exploding, department stores were rising, and suddenly clothing was ephemeral, constantly changing, just like the fleeting light the Impressionists were trying to capture on canvas. The bustle era of the 1870s and 80s took this even further. Women's bodies were literally architectural. The bustle, that wire cage jutting out from the lower back, created a silhouette so dramatic it defied physics. Fabric draped in impossible ways, creating shadows and volumes that painters like James Tissot obsessed over. These weren't just clothes, they were wearable installations. And then came the wool rebels. The aesthetic dress movement said enough. Artists like the pre-Raphaelites rejected the corset, the crinoline, the bustle, all those disguising elements of fashion. They looked back to ancient Greece, to the Venus de Milo, to natural beauty. Jane Morris, wife of arts and crafts leader William Morris, wore loose medieval-inspired gowns that hinted at a body underneath, not a cage. This was revolutionary. Fashion designer Mariano Fortuny took these ideas and ran with them, creating pleated silk gowns in the early 1900s that looked like they'd been lifted from a Greek vase. His work influenced everyone from Issey Miyake to contemporary fashion photographers who still reference those flowing, body-revealing forms. Here's the thing. 19th century costume design gave us the language we still use in art today. When Alexander McQueen created his 2006 collection with exaggerated Victorian silhouettes, when Tim Walker photographs models in crinoline-inspired structures, when contemporary artists like Cindy Sherman use corsetry in her self-portraits, they're all speaking in a visual vocabulary invented in the 1800s. The corset became a symbol. The cage crinoline became a metaphor for female constraint. The bustle became shorthand for Victorian excess. Even the way we think about the body in art comes from this era. The Impressionists taught us to see fashion as a marker of modernity, of social class, of identity. A woman's dress in a Monet painting tells you everything about who she is, where she's going, what she desires. That's why fashion photography today still references Victorian silhouettes, because those shapes carry meaning, history, power. And let's talk about the dark side, tight lacing, the practice of cinching corsets to create impossibly tiny waists. was both celebrated and condemned. Dress reformers in the 80s showed images of the Venus de Milo next to corseted women to prove how fashion was literally deforming bodies. This tension between beauty and pain, between art and suffering, still echoes in contemporary art. Artists today explore body modification, beauty standards, the violence of fashion, all themes that started in the 19th century. The legacy is everywhere. When you see a fashion editorial with exaggerated proportions, when you visit a museum exhibition exploring the relationship between clothing and identity, when you watch a period drama where costumes tell the story, you're seeing 19th century costume design's influence. Those Victorian designers understood something profound, that shaping the body is shaping how we see ourselves, how we move through the world, how we create meaning. Fashion became art in the 19th century because artists and designers realized clothing wasn't just functional, it was transformative. It was a canvas. It was a statement. And every contemporary artist working with fashion, every photographer shooting haute couture, every sculptor exploring the body, they're all descendants of those Victorian costume designers who dared to turn the human form into their masterpiece.